Hello, Leo friends. Up today is your November 2025 Tarot and Numerology, plus a detailed Vedic astrology forecast for the month of November. And we're going to look at the November 5th full moon and November 19th new moon. Now, Leo, looking over here at your charts, November, especially the latter half of November, brings a lot of activation to your fourth house of home and some really powerful planetary yogas that increase your personal power and magnetism, Leo. We're going to get into all of that a little bit later in the video. If you're new to Vedic Sidereal Astrology, a quick and easy way to know your Vedic Sun Sign is if your birthday is from August 17th to September 16th, you are a Leo Sun Sign in Vedic Sidereal Astrology. If you're new here, welcome to Anastasia Tarot and Vedic Astrology, where I help you navigate the cosmic currents and surf the planetary wavelengths with a little more ease and grace. This November 2025 Tarot and Astrology forecast is for Leo Rising, Leo Moon, and Leo Sun. We are going to start with Tarot and Numerology, then get into the detailed astrological transits, and chapters are time-stamped in the description if you like to skip ahead. And as always with collective readings, Leo, take what aligns, leave the rest behind. So now let's get into your Tarot and Numerology reading. Hey Leo, I have pulled 6 cards for you, and what's jumping out at me right away is you have these 2 tens. You have the 10 of Wands and also the 10 of Swords. And so what are tens, right? Those speak to completion. And you also have, I'm looking over at your charts, you've got exalted Jupiter in your 12th house. So Leo, you got some complex energies going on in November, right? Jupiter is a benefic planet, it's exalted, it's strong, but it's in your 12th house where it can be causing increased expenses. And also 12th house being the final house, that does kind of, reinforce this theme where we see these 2 tens are 2 cards of completion. Now, this 10 of Swords is showing up in what to avoid, and we all want to avoid the 10 of Swords, right? 10 of Swords is a pretty disagreeable card. It has to do with suffering, and of course, who doesn't want to avoid suffering? Taking that and more specifically, Leo, what does this advice mean to you to avoid this 10 of Swords? There's if you're not getting your way about something, Leo, avoid that sort of scorched earth policy, like, I will just destroy everything if I don't get my way. Really, this is a two-way street. Of course, none of us want to have, misfortune, difficulty. Of course, we all want to avoid that. Very important as we seek to avoid it for ourselves. Very important to also look at how do we avoid that for other people as well. So this really talks about avoiding this disagreeable 10 of Swords energy internally, like not just looking at the people outside you and trying to avoid anything difficult that they might do, but also internally, how do you avoid causing this to other people? You've also got a couple of 5s going on. Now, in the spread itself, it's this 5 of Cups, but when we do the numerology of adding all the number cards together, which in this case, there are these 2 tens and this 7, which we haven't gotten into yet, and the 5 of Cups, All of those added together equal 32, which equals 5, and this is the Hierophant card. This number 5 goes to the Hierophant card. One of the other, I think Aries had this as well. I'm not sure, one of the other signs. So what is this Hierophant card and this 5 vibe that you've got going on this reading? Very much, Leo, there is going to be a need to blend together opposites. And speaking on an alchemical level, this is, male and female. If you're in negotiations with someone, it could be blending opposite viewpoints. For Leos who are married, this would definitely, point to working things out in your marriage and being willing to, look for solutions and ways of blending both points of view within your marriage. This card also speaks to, kind of doing things by the book, right? It's the Hierophant. It's associated with a pope or a priest or a religious authority. So it's very much time to do things by the book, especially you've got Ketu on your first house and Rahu on your 7th house. So this is not the time to try to take shortcuts or, do any sort of shady dealings in your relationships with other people, especially with Rahu in that 7th house. So this is very much, especially with this Hierophant card, as being your numerology card, very much a time to be transparent and above board with all your 7th house affairs. And what is that? That's, marriage, partnership, romantic partners, business partners, any sort of partnership, really go that extra mile to be very above board in your dealings. Now, a couple people are involved. We've got this, Queen of Wands and this King of Cups. Now, Leo, you have a lot of 4th house activation. So what is 4th house? That's home, mother, vehicles. So for the first part of the month, you've got Mars is very strong in Scorpio in your 4th house. And so for Leos who are involved in, real estate, home improvement projects, buying or selling a house, any kind of financing having to do with the house, this Queen of Wands is, speaking to that. And then by the end of the month, by November 19th, really your 4th house, Leo, is just lit up. So really a lot going on with the home. And again, for some Leos, it's going to be real estate, buying, selling, home projects, things of that nature. Now, one thing to know, Leo, is you do have Saturn retrograde in your 8th house of, joint finances and unearned wealth. So, there could be some frustrations with loans or things, real estate loans or something of that nature. It should improve by December. All in all, this looks mostly positive for you with this Queen of Cups here. Now, this King of Cups, so again, these could be two people who are part of your situation. There could be a woman who's a fire sign woman. Leo, this could be your card, or it could be, another fire sign woman that you're dealing with. And again, Queen of Batons is, very often she has to do with real estate, things of that nature. You could also be dealing with a water sign man, either, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces man. Now, Leo, if this is not a man and your question and your interest has nothing to do with a man, and this is not a man in your life, this can very much be you getting some emotional mastery, because what is King of Cups? He has the emotional maturity, the emotional intelligence. So with all this activation in your 4th house, You know, and for some Leos, this might be your mom, right? Because fourth house has to do with your mom. So with all this activation in your fourth house, use some emotional maturity and emotional mastery when dealing with your near and dear ones. Seven of Wands, you may have to sort of defend your position a little bit, Leo. You know, especially with, you know, you've got you've got this exalted Jupiter in 12th house. And, you know, we talked about that, you know, it could increase expenses, and it definitely encourages you to, you know, put closure on what you can put closure on. So you may need to, you know, defend your position somewhat, and this may be financial. For example, you know, with Saturn on your 8th house, if you were depending on, you know, money, you know, coming through a partnership, and again, this could be from a spouse or a business partnership, or it could have been money coming from a loan. If you were depending on money coming through those 8th house channels, you've got retrograde Saturn that's slowing that down, and then you've got Jupiter in the 12th house, which might be increasing expenses. So just, you know, consolidate your position. Don't take on debt at this time if that's at all possible, you know, especially with Jupiter exalted in the 12th house. If you can avoid taking on debt during November, Leo, definitely do so. And this, you know, with this Five of Cups, that may be a little disappointing. Like maybe you had some joint financial ventures, you know, that you were hoping would pan out, and you may be feeling kind of disappointed. But just for November, this is more of a time to consolidate your finances, consolidate your budget. Be prepared, you know, if some, you know, joint financial ventures or loan or something isn't coming through and it's getting delayed, and there are maybe some higher than normal expenses, just be prepared for that. And all in all, Leo, this is, you know, there's some real challenges with this reading, and we'll get into that more with, you know, when we get into your astrology. But there's also some support here in just, you don't need to reinvent the wheel to deal with these situations, Leo. For married Leos, definitely you'll, you know, have some support from your marriage, your spouse, your financial, your marital partner, and also just the support of, you know, do things by the book, do things by the number, be very transparent, very honest, do things by the book. And so that is your tarot reading. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. And now we're going to get into your Vedic astrology transits reading, where we're going to go sign by sign and house by house. Okay, Leo, thanks for watching, and see you in the astrology part. Hello, Leo, and welcome to your horoscope for November 2025. Now, you've got some challenges coming up in this month of November, Leo. We'll get into that in just a minute. And if you are new to Vedic astrology, a quick and easy way to know if you have Leo Sun is that the sidereal Vedic dates for Leo are August 17th to September 17th. So if you're just giving Vedic astrology a try, if your birthday falls from August 17 to September 17, you have Leo Sun. And remember that Vedic Sidereal Astrology is based on the actual fixed positions of the stars, whereas tropical Western astrology is a symbolic system tied to the seasons here on planet Earth. Okay, with that being said, let's get into this Vedic astrology forecast for Leo rising, Leo moon, and Leo sun. We're going to start looking at the month in the full moon on November 5th, and then we'll get into the new moon on November 19th, and we can see here the full moon is created when the sun is exactly opposite the moon. The sun's at 19 degrees Libra and the moon is at 19 degrees Aries. That's what creates the full moon. So the main thing you've got going on right now, Leo, is this Cancer has, Jupiter, great benefic, it has moved into Cancer where it's exalted. So this is quite nice. Jupiter in Cancer happens once every 12 years and it's an exalted benefic. But for you, Leo, this is happening in your 12th house. So this is a bit of a mixed blessing. Jupiter in 12th house can be a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging. And why is that? Well, Jupiter is the planet of expansion. Jupiter expands wherever it goes, and that's usually a good thing. But the 12th house is the house of debt and expenses. So during a period of Jupiter in the 12th house, and this is going to be on and off for approximately a year, Jupiter is going to be in your 12th house, Leo, you definitely should budget for increased expenses. And if you can avoid taking debt with Jupiter in your 12th house, that's a good idea. That's the best outcome. Now, last year I had Jupiter in my 12th house and I ended up taking a pretty large debt because I had to buy a new car. And my old car died. There was just no other way about it. So I understand, Leo, you may actually find yourself in a position that you have to take debt. And, sometimes that's part of life. But if you can avoid taking on debt while you have Jupiter in your 12th house, that is the best case scenario. And again, if you find that you do have to take on any debt, definitely minimize it. Try to be as conservative as possible. Now, Jupiter in the 12th house exalted in Cancer isn't all bad. What else is the 12th house? It's also spiritual realization. So in spite of Jupiter bringing expanded expenses and possibly expanded debt, Jupiter can also expand your ability to put aside the ego and deal with a more universal consciousness. That's the 12th house is all about this universal cosmic consciousness. And this could actually, if you're open to these lessons, Leo, this can work quite nicely, right? You've got Ketu, the planet of mystical undoing over your first house. So this combination of Ketu over your first house and Jupiter in your 12th house, it can be painful and challenging if you're holding on only to your worldly and ego attachments, because both of these planets in their own way and in their own positions are trying to spiritualize your life, Leo. They are trying to move you past egoic attachments to the material world, to, the sort of 3D material attachments. And so if you're able to approach this asterism with a sense of release, being willing to release some of your ego attachments, being willing to experience the mystical reality of universal cosmic consciousness that transcends the ego, then this Ketu in the first house operating with exalted Jupiter in your 12th house can really open the door for a lot of spiritual growth for you, Leo. So just something to keep in mind. Now, this retrograde Saturn in your 8th house, we've mentioned that before. 8th house has to do with joint finances. So again, with Jupiter in your 12th house and Saturn in your 8th house, you may experience either delays or difficulties if you're, for example, applying for loans, and really best if you don't, but if you do, again, expect some delays and difficulties, some do-overs. You know, Saturn is a slow-moving planet. He's in retrograde all the way until November 27th. So if you're in any kind of loan application process, anything like that, there may be, you know, do-overs and delays. And similar if you're in any sort of joint finances situation. This could be with a business partner, it could be with a mate or family members, but issues of joint finances are going to be slowed down by this retrograde Saturn. This may improve when Saturn goes out of retrograde at the end of the month, simply because retrograde brings a lot of do-overs, and when Saturn goes direct, you may at least progress more in a forward direction, but again, Saturn acts slowly. Now, you have Venus and Sun are activating your 3rd house, so this is a little bit of a ray of sunshine, Leo. It's not all bad for November. You've got some nice things going on, and Venus is in domicile, so we have this strong Jupiter that's exalted, and we have a very strong Venus. She's very happy being in Libra. That's her sign. And so this Sun and Venus being in your 3rd house, this is going to bring some grace to your day-to-day life. For those of you who have, you know, siblings, brothers and sisters, especially younger siblings, you could be enjoying good relationships with your younger siblings at this time. And if you know, just generally speaking, your day-to-day communications with, you know, neighbors, siblings, coworkers, the people you see every day. This is going to get a subtle boost here. Venus in domicile is going to add to your own charisma factor in expressing yourself. And it's also, she's just going to give a good vibe when dealing with, you know, neighbors and siblings and, you know, the people you communicate with every day. And Sun may put the emphasis on your own motivation, but this is really quite a nice activation of your 3rd house, Leo, in terms of your day-to-day communication. Now, you have a 4th house activation of Mars and Mercury, and this is a complex activation. Now, what is 4th house? That is home, vehicles, and mother. So Mars is difficult in the 4th house, right? Mars is the warrior planet, and he's in the house of, you know, the home, which, you know, all of us, I assume we all want to have a peaceful home. So one thing to be aware of, now I will just back up to say, for Leos who are in the, you know, real estate trades, building trades, anything where your work has to do with home, you know, home remodel projects, home renovation, home improvement. If you have anything like that going on, or if you work in those types of fields, then Mars in the 4th house can be quite beneficial for Leos in those careers. And Mars is also in domicile, right? We've got Jupiter is exalted, Venus is in domicile, Mars is in domicile in your 4th house. So this is creating a Ruchaka yoga for you, Leo, and this is going to be in effect for most of the month of November. So this is going to elevate your experience for November, you know, in spite of some of the difficulties we talked about with this, you know, 12th and 8th house activations. This Ruchaka yoga is elevating your experience. It elevates your personal power, your motivation, your vitality. So the main thing to watch out for, though, is be careful with your near and dear ones, right? Don't get too aggressive in your communication. You know, Mars can definitely have, you know, kind of militant and aggressive quality to the communication. Instead, lean into Mercury being in your fourth house. Now, Mercury is not particularly happy being in Scorpio. You know, it can sort of cloud the clear thinking with emotionality. Think of combining Mars and Mercury together. Make your communication strategic and lean more into negotiation and strategic communication, and be very mindful about not getting too aggressive. Okay, now let's move into, the final thing I'm just going to say about this full moon. The full moon itself is happening in Aries in your ninth house. So this is quite a nice full moon for you. It's probably going to feel good having this full moon in your ninth house. Now, let's get into November 19th, new moon. There are some changes happening as the planets are on the move, and certain planets are going to go into retrograde. So we're going to get a look at that. Okay, Leo, so we are now looking at the new moon on November 19th. And as you can see, your fourth house is just super activated by this new moon. And one thing, Mercury has now gone into retrograde. Jupiter has now gone into retrograde. So we have now, by the end of November, we have 3 planets in retrograde: Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. So this latter part of November, Leo, it may not be the best time to launch new projects, especially new business projects. You know, you may want to wait until Mercury goes out of retrograde. So, you know, with 3 planets in retrograde, if you are in a position where you have to launch new projects, just be aware they may be slow getting off the ground, and there may be do-overs and false starts. And with this activation in your fourth house, there's, you know, this is a big activation of your fourth house with the Sun, Mercury, and Mars all there. Mars continues that Ruchaka Yoga, which is elevating your experience. However, Mars is combust, so that weakens it a little bit. And if you enjoy doing any spiritual practices around the new moon, Leo, to plant the seeds that you wish to see grow over the next 2 weeks, or if you are, you know, if your goals are longer term, of course, the new moon can still be a great time to plant the seeds for longer term goals to blossom. So with this activation of your fourth house, definitely things having to do, if you have goals that have to do with your home, with your vehicles, or with your mom, all of these sorts of things, it can be supported by doing meditation, you know, for manifestation, planting seeds around this new moon. Again, with this Mars, if if your mom is still with us, you know, just err on the side of caution. If your mom gets on your nerves or something like that, just, you know, again, lean into this Mercury. With Mars and Mercury together in the fourth house, you may find that you're having to repeat yourself with your near and dear ones that you live with. Maybe they didn't get the message the first time and you've got to repeat yourself, or maybe you have to express it in a different way. So that is pretty much it for November. We already talked about Venus continues this, you know, beneficial activation of your first house. That's going to continue throughout November, and that's quite nice. And, you know, Rahu continues in your 7th house. So, you know, we've talked about this before, but again, if you're dealing with partners, and this could be romantic partners or business partners, with Rahu there, you know, just be very careful of any sorts of shady or shadowy kinds of dealings. Your focus may be very much on partnership, and partnership may be very much on your mind. But if you have any temptation to be less than completely above board and transparent, you really don't want to get manipulative in your partnerships. Even if you feel a temptation there, it will bite you in the butt later, so just don't do it. And by the same token, Leo, if you are getting an intuition that someone is being less than transparent, you know, maybe even dishonest, you know, in a romantic thing, you know, if a romantic interest doesn't seem to be, you know, they're maybe not everything they seem to be on the surface. But again, it applies in business. Just be really aware with this shadow planet on your 7th house of partnerships. Just really err on the side of caution, be transparent, and ask for transparency in the people you're dealing with, whether it's romantic or business partners. Okay, Leo, that is your November forecast. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. This is a very small channel, and every little bit helps. Wishing you the blessings of good luck, peace, prosperity, and good health for November. Namaste.